Jamie, can you hear us?
Yes.
I make sure everything works.
Well, hey, Jamie.
Well, how did that end up with city clerk
What?
presentation?
We're gonna listen about your funding, personal funding.
I know it's getting-
Me, yeah.
Honestly, back to back.
Hey, Deanna. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Second meeting, I get to chair this. Exciting.
Hey.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
So Jamie's in New York and Dana has down with some illness. So we'll call to order this morning or this afternoon, excuse me. You know, do a roll call.
Richard Swarthout.
Here.
Grace.
Here.
Jenny Rucker.
Here.
Here.
I think we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is the approval of January 14th minute meeting.
I move to approve it. I'll second.
I got a motion and a second to approve the minutes as they've been submitted. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? Okay, approved. Next up, board communications.
I do not have any.
Rachel says she has no board communications and public comments. Looking over the vast crowd that is here, and I don't think we have any book.
We do have some.
Oh, we do. Andy's on there. All right. Discussion items. We're up for new business. And this is you, city clerk, not about your.
You want me to run through it though? Okay.
I'm here more for questions and comments, but
Okay.
Rachel put this together with, and I put the.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nick.
That's why it's fun. You have too much time to put it together.
My life depends on.
So, this is just kind of gonna be a snapshot, of our funding. And then you can ask direct questions to Nick afterwards. As you can see, I had to put in some Parks and Rec humor for it. And so how's the department currently funded? So Parks is, out of the general fund. The city budget is broken up into numerous funds. A few of them to list would be street and sidewalk, electric, water and sewer, waterfront equipment, or a couple others. These are the basis of what parks would come out of. The Parks and Rec department, as I said, is primarily through the general fund. Parks and Recreation budget is approximately, Nick can kind of go into more of that in the end. It's kind of a wonky number because of everything we pull from. Parks and Rec is also funded in part through cost sharing with Little and West Traverse Townships. And then potential forms of funding parks. We've got a lot of options. They're all terrible, but we have them. So revenue streams, this would include like programming, our events, rental of facilities like the Kiwanis building. Without private events, however, we're not going to be bringing in substantial revenue. Although not substantial revenue, we should ensure we are breaking even from these rentals, like applications for events on city property. You know, how much goes into those applications, how many trash cans, picnic tables, setting up barricades with DPW and parks working on these things. A millage, these are usually through a friend of the parks group to advocate for parks led by volunteers to support park initiatives. It can be operational based or capital improvement based. Needs to be voted on by the public for a certain number of years. Other potential forms of funding, the Headley override, the city's gone for the Headley override twice, correct?
Correct.
So that is also voted the public. A Parks Foundation Conservancy, a Parks Conservancy or Foundation is a nonprofit organization. It usually is a partnership with the city, but it has its own staff, its own board, and it's kind of a separate entity. And that's usually for like the ones off the top of my head, like Chicago has a Parks Foundation, like they own Soldier Field, for instance, to be the parks. Houston also has a really nice parks conservancies for one of their like larger parks. The city just simply couldn't fund. Developer impact fees. An impact fee is required of developers to offset the cost of city infrastructure that will need to be built in order to serve that new development. Sometimes that's a fee in terms of land. Sometimes it's a fee in terms of funding. That's kind of a newer thing that communities are doing. Funding parks and future CIPs. This was a really great conversation we had with council. Council has decided to have a fundraising committee. So it'll be a council committee. So fundraising will be a great option. Grants, federal, local, state, usually go through Michigan Department of Natural Resources. Bond is a debt issued by the government. Right now, the city will likely go for a bond for the substation. So it'll be quite a few years that parks would have potential to go for a bond. So it's usually not the best option. And then capital reserves designed for infrastructure upgrades. And that is a reserve within the city budget, specifically for capital improvement projects. Are there any questions? I know that's like such a scratching the surface of the budget. And I have actually the city budget pulled up 40 pages. But if anyone did look at it and had certain questions on line items or kind of what the parks budget is, or questions on millages, that's all Nick.
Well, if you want to go back to the beginning of your slideshow, Rachel,
Yeah.
then we can go point by point, questions, clarifications, whatever need be done.
This one.
So this one right here, for instance, as Rachel stated, the bulk of funding comes through the general fund. And the street and sidewalk fund. You know, considering that, in my mind, I would look at the boardwalk and say, okay, not really a parks thing, kind of a sidewalks thing. Parks and Recreation might be involved in it. But I think that should come from more of a sidewalk and street and general fund because it connects our local foot traffic. The electric fund has historically done quite a bit with community promotions, Christmas tree lights, you know, things like that, that even though maybe the DDA would be involved downtown, there's lights throughout different parks and different things, and the electric fund helps out with that. Water and sewer fund is a different kind of fund, but they would get involved if we put in a splash pad, you know, something to that effect. The waterfront fund is in charge of everything from Soul Street Beach basically to the pier. Years ago, before any of our time, Waterfront Fund, which is run by the Harbor Commission, said, you know what, let's just leave the beach to the general fund and taxpayers' dollars. But Marina Park, any of the parks down on the waterfront, that's what those user fees from our boaters are designed to do, is maintain that waterfront. So if there's something done at Marina Park, I would say, okay, some of the parks fund from the general fund because the public still uses it. But the boaters are heavy users. So that's been a working relationship with that fund for years. The equipment fund, so if we have the DPW, we spend a lot of time, for instance, at skate park. When our guys go out and they work, they use equipment that is owned by that fund and rented back to the parks. So if they're doing something at the skate park, when they fill out their time cards, they will say, I used a front end loader and 50 yards of black dirt at skate park, and they charge their time and equipment. But for the most part, Parks and Rec is supplied by the general fund taxpayer dollars, in my opinion, as it should be. You know, taxpayers pay to have a city that is there for them to use and enjoy. The budget is approximately blank. This is a question Rachel asked me to do about a week ago. So if we look these up for 2025, and these are not only what I see as operating expenditures when you look at the budget, but things that have been put on the CIP or skate park. We're not sure where that's gonna go yet because it's brand spanking new, full year in operation. We put a number out there of $50,000 and change. The beach. That one. We have issues with lifeguards at times, but the beach is pretty static. I mean, it's pretty across the board what it costs to run that. There's a few things that I know Rachel would like to do with the bathrooms and stuff. And Kiwanis Park, obviously, when you look at the budget, that's a big one. We got over $500,000 budgeted, roughly 25 grand for operations, you know, snowmobiling and or the sledding and whatever things we might do there. But there's a big upgrade coming. You guys know better than I do. Parks and grounds is our catch-all. So that would cover everything that is not, you know, such as here, if we want to do an event here, if we want to do something at Dorn Park. These are the operations that just basically go through to maintain parks and grounds or something that doesn't fall into a specific park. And that really covers it. And that's probably just over $1 million. And again, these are somewhat my opinions. I think if the city is going to have nice parks, which we should, for a resort community, which we've been told repeatedly, that we need to maintain it and keep it. That's an asset of the city and we should take care of it. So funding big projects that would lead to the next slide. So say we wanted to do a major upgrade to, I don't know.
Nick, before you leave that last slide, you have a question. How much money comes from the townships from West Traverse and Traverse?
Right, 30 grand
Yeah.
outside.
Okay.
And we got nowhere with those conversations, the townships.
Slightly, just because I'm on boards and commissions with these supervisors and I work with them closely on a daily. Their funding comes from a county allocation. So they get, the county will levy a millage and then divvy it up based on the needs of the townships. And we know how many townships are in the county. Their hands are pretty tied with financing. So to get into a long depth, let's triple this financing, I think would be more counterproductive to what we're trying to do than, and I get it, because when you look at the population of the city, as opposed to Little Traverse, West Traverse combined, but I don't really wanna, it's worth having a conversation publicly with the board, you know, maybe have them come here. But I think that maybe we might be shooting ourselves in the foot by pushing too hard.
And sorry, just to clarify on that, the reason, and Nick, tell me if I'm wrong, with kind of the quote of like shooting ourselves in the foot, is the townships are not held to that agreement.
No,
At any time, they could just say, we're not setting a check.
there may be an
That's not an
agreement from the
agreement.
'60s that I've got to play my hands on, but
Yeah.
that's one of those handshake
Yeah,
things.
handshake.
Maybe happen
Right.
back.
But you said that it comes from essentially the county collects a millage,
There-
gives it back to the townships from,
For instance, West Traverse has a millage for the conservancy. What's the name of it? Lawrence West.
Yeah.
They have one mill that I think they levy for that, which probably just about covers what they spend. So then the rest of it's coming out of their operational millage, which would go towards streets, you know.
Nick, I have a question. Hi, this is Dana. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Dana, go ahead.
Hi. Nick, can the townships actually levy a tax? Like
Yes,
as a way to, okay,
I think each township's bylaws might be slightly different. I'm not really big into the township laws and regulations, but I believe they can levy a millage of some fashion. I don't know that they could levy a millage. It might be a hard sell for them to levy a millage when a fair amount of it comes to the city. I mean, their constituents might be a little hard pressed to do that, but I
well,
believe
just
that.
we found from our surveys though that, a good portion of our park users are township people. And just wondering, Rachel and I have been thinking about, doing the presentation, the Parks report for them, we're doing so many things that are great that their residents are able to take advantage of. And, it sure seems like we might get support, I don't know. I guess we could do some math on it to figure it out, but do you think that would be received well at all?
Possibly by the constituents, maybe not necessarily by the township boards.
Yeah,
That leads me down another off topic, but it'll come back up again. I've heard talk over the years of a Parks and Recreation Authority. You
I
know,
think about
how-
that too.
How far that would stretch, I don't know. I mean, would you go Little Traverse, West Traverse, Pleasant View, Redmond? I mean, I don't know. That would be something that would have to be talked about. But then you're getting into a millage with an authority that would cover all the authority members. And that would be a hard sell across some of the little smaller communities that maybe don't have the taxable values or the money to do this. I think that the really first order of business in my mind with talking to the townships, at least West Traverse and Little Traverse, would be for you guys as a board to invite them to a meeting, put together a nice presentation and some of your data from your collecting that you've done and see where it leads.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
And it does seem to me at least acknowledging that they're contributing 30,000 to the parks here in Harbor Springs. Now that we may not think that's a lot, but they probably do think that they are giving quite a bit. And so maybe a way for us to talk through what are we providing for that? What are we doing through that? And at least start that conversation on a thanks, and here's what you get for it.
Then here's where we like
And
to see
here's where
ourselves.
maybe let's continue to have conversations.
For sure.
It seems like a good spot.
I think I'm gonna bring up 2 points. Only because I know how the general public thinks, and this is what I would think. If I lived in a township and I knew the city of Harbor Springs residents shot down Headley twice to not raise their own taxes, and then the city came and asked for my taxes to be raised to fund parks, like, I think that's gonna be a heated discussion. I'm just being honest, I'm like devil's advocate, that's going to be.
But Rach, we're not gonna make any decisions here about
Right.
that right now, but at the very least, inviting them to come
Yeah.
and let's talk about parks together and have some
Like
conversations.
showing
together.
what we're doing versus like asking for more funds
Yeah.
are two totally
agree.
different, need to be different conversations.
And I have a question. So you mentioned that most of the money comes from the general funds. Is there any difference when it comes to taxpayers, seasonal residents versus year-round residents? Everyone's contributing the same.
To the city, yes.
To the city,
Well,
general
based on
funds.
your home's value, obviously, your
Right,
taxable value.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, the non-residents are paying the school millage, where the homestead or principal residence exemption. Those of us that live here are not paying the school, but yes, it's a straight across the board, the same millage.
And so when we're talking West Traverse Township, we're talking the Point and Glen Drive, right? That's not part of the city, even though.
Drives in the city.
I'm part of the Glen Drive in our city, not the
Yeah, part-
entirety.
There's roughly 30 properties in Glen Drive that are part of West Traverse Township that we collect taxes on at our millage and then submit every year as a 425 agreement. So I submit whatever the township's millage is, which is 1.8, maybe 2. I send them a check for those 30 properties. Harbor Point, none. I mean, they are part of West Traverse Taxing Authority, so they pay taxes, so part of that 13, 14, 15 grand, whatever comes from West Traverse is paid for. But we're in a public meeting, but I mean, there's a lot of people in July and August on Harbor Point that are heavy users of this town.
That's
And
more
I
my
really
question.
honestly believe that just in good faith as a board, I would talk to them and say, look, here's where we're at. We're trying to, here's what we give, just as you had stated, and here's where we'd like to see in 5, 10 years. Maybe some contribution like the townships. It doesn't hurt to ask.
So am I understanding that you're saying Harbor Point does not contribute to West Traverse some of the money that comes to us? Is that what you're saying?
No,
They do not.
I'm saying that of the money that West Traverse pays the city.
Mhm.
And what I do is say, okay, there's a percentage. Harbor Springs residents, Little Traverse and West Traverse. Harbor Springs absorbs probably 70% of it, and the rest of it's between those two. So whoever pays taxes in West Traverse or Little Traverse, a portion of their money will eventually come to us, but it's minuscule.
And then my understanding, Little Traverse is majority of Weaverton, which also heavy users of.
Yeah, I think we have 20 homes. Yes, we're not very far down.
I think I get the track you're on here, Sarah, and I would like to suggest maybe that we think about maybe doing a special meeting for our stakeholders, which could be Weaverton and Harbor Point and the townships. And I think we've got to do something nice, maybe we would have it at New York or do something really special and give them the presentation. And maybe this could be like the start of a really good thing for fundraising. And I don't know if it would be, it seems like it could be Parks Board or maybe it would be the new fundraising committee, but there's so many generous people and, you're not going to get any money unless you ask. And rather than going one by one and asking, it seems like, I don't know if they've got like, we'd invite their boards or something. I'm not really sure how it would work. We could talk more about it.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
I think that the question I would have with that, after seeing it for decades, is I think when people donate, there's people that love to donate and they love their communities. But I also think when you're trying to solicit donations for operations, it's going to be a much tougher sell than here's what I donated to. Here's this beautiful park, such as the boardwalk. Here's my name on a plaque. I think that the city, with whatever we can get from the townships or whoever, needs to be able to maintain operations of these parks on our own. And then maybe, and again, opinions of mine, but look at some of the bigger projects in the long term and say, this is what's coming up in 2028. And use the donations for something other than operations, because if the donations go away and we can't take care of what we have, we're going backwards.
We did though have the Mary Joyce Claire Reynolds, I got the order of the names wrong, but fund, which did help support operations. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. The trunk or treat, I think, was part of that, and a few other things. And there are donors, I'm sure, that would just say, you know what, this is perpetual money for doing things such as that.
Well, it seems like to me this is a multi-year project if we're gonna start to chip away at perhaps getting some more money from the township. And even if we do, it will be a small increase, my guess. But it's a good thing to do, to have them, to invite them in, to have them involved in some of our discussions, to ask some questions about needs. They are stakeholders of ours. They do contribute. And while we may think that it's not a lot, it is something. And they should be recognized for that and kind of given not a seat at the table, but at least a part of the conversation should include them. And at least it's a start. You got to start somewhere in that conversation. It's going to happen. Won't happen.
Nick, I have another question about funding from other funds in the city. We're starting to talk more about interpretive signage at parks. And I think we're probably going to have the signage for the disc golf paid for out of the program that Rachel came up with for funding. What's it called, Rachel?
Disc golf sponsor, a whole
Okay.
sponsor program, yeah.
Yep. But like we're looking at signage at Shea Park, about the historical stuff of Ephraim Shea and all he did. I'm thinking about an example at, if we did Harbor View Park and let's say we had like a viewing telescope, to talk about, here's what you can learn about Little Traverse Bay or what you might see through the telescope. Anyways, how does the city pay for signage? What fund does that come out of? Is that general?
It depends. I mean, if I had to put up a sign that says City of Harbor Springs Electrical Substation buried in the woods up on White Road, it would come out of the electric fund.
Yeah,
The beach, general fund, I would argue, and, Marina Park, okay, waterfront fund.
okay,
Water and sewer fund and the electric fund, since they're both utilities, do have restrictions on transfers of money between user fees, which those two funds are funded by utility rates, and taxpayer dollars. So if I said, you know what, we want to take X amount of dollars from the water and sewer fund and transfer it to the general fund for signage, it would not work. My auditors would not allow that.
Pay for the wayfinding signs, like it's Zorn, the blue ones, and the DDA did that project.
The DDA paid for everything within the CBD. The city funded everything uptown. Which
But
is
the
that
Zorn
question.
Beach one wouldn't have been within the CBD, correct?
Right.
Okay, so
I-
that was
I
the
don't
general fund
remember
parks,
How
yeah,
I split the bills, but
yeah.
I'm assuming the wayfinding signs for the beach.
And I only asked because, for instance, when we did the skate park, that all came out of the parks general fund. But when we do signage at Ford Park or Marina Park, that's usually a conversation with Mike Johnson. Are they voter rules, waterfront rules, are they park rules? And then we just kind of dictate based off that.
A lot of the different revenue sources in the city across the board have different restrictions on them and what we can and cannot do with it.
so it'll just be a case by case thing, probably.
Yeah, pretty much. That's actually, and to be truthfully honest, 90% of the parks is gonna be general fund dollars.
Yeah,
Until we get to Ford Park, okay, we're gonna spend X amount of dollars eventually down there reworking the entire thing. That's gonna be waterfront fund. But they're also public restrooms, so I can make a point for, even though this is a waterfront fund and it caters mostly to boaters, that's still our public. And I think that tax dollars should be involved there. I might get a different conversation with our city council, but they can ask me my opinion, I'll give it to them at that time.
here's something else I've been thinking about is, I think Sarah's dad actually brought it up when we were chatting at Marina Park at Fall Fest last year. That most residents expect some of their tax dollars to go to parks, right?
I think so.
Do you think that's a common thing,
I
or?
think it depends on the taxpayers, but yes, I think they do. I
Yeah.
think people are aware of where their tax dollars go to a certain extent. I've learned over the years that half the population that I've dealt with in whatever city or township thought that we kept every dollar from the schools and, and people unfortunately don't pay enough attention. So I don't know that they know where it goes and how it goes there.
Yeah,
But yes, the bulk of them do.
yeah, so back to your point of, probably the city should most appropriately pay for operational costs for parks. And I think we could use more money for operational stuff. Would it be reasonable to try and up our budget some year based on, let's say we did some research into, what the per capita expenditure for parks is in other towns our size?
And base it off that.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't know what else to base it off, or,
Bite us.
Well, and I think, yes, in theory, okay, so you've got a town the size of Petoskey, for instance, they budget X. This many people, residents and taxpayers compared to here, take that percentage and apply it to the budget. We also have to look at the budget and the general fund as a whole. So if all of a sudden we're like, all right, well, we have enough people in this town in July and August that we want to spend 40% of our general fund budget on parks, that's gotta come from another line item in the budget. Cause
Yeah,
tax.
I'm thinking that now that police is out of, has their own fund, that maybe we could hope for some more money. It seems like every year we get more and more demand for programming.
The police millage is up in 2 years, is it not?
Well, and there lies more political.
I didn't hear what you said, Rachel.
I think the police millage is up for vote in 2 years, don't quote me, but I think it's.
I believe it's 2 years and then a village. You know, and I'm gonna say this, like I've said it thousands of times in different meetings, is the real key here, and I'm gonna get calls tomorrow, but the Headley override is a real thing.
Yeah.
It really truthfully is for every city and every government in the state of Michigan. We've tried that path, it didn't work. We're trying to fund parks now because we're getting requests. You know, the police millage passed. It's the $330,000 we get from the police millage covers about a third of what the police actually cost, including some that we pay to the fire department. So to put it bluntly, where we're at right now and where we're going again is these millages, we passed 1 mill for the police. It's already lost, a 1/10 of a mill or 3/10 of a mill because of the override. So we're sliding back down that slippery slope. And the first thing that people are gonna say, just because we've all seen it before, what do you want to spend money on? We know police millages will pass. Generally, public safety. When it goes right down the line, parks unfortunately falls to the bottom. That's why I would strongly push against the parks millage attempt. Just because the political climate, I just don't think it would pass.
He's gonna go for one the next year or so, and I plan to work really closely with that parks director on that and kind of the yes committee. So I'm hoping to kind of see the process from beginning to end and how it goes in Petoskey. But Nick's right, it's a bigger, it's a more political, funding is so political, unfortunately. And the other important piece, like he explained at the millages for Headley, is there are parks departments downstate who, the communities also have not done the Headley override, who will, their millage will run out, and Nick, quote me if I'm wrong, but not only are they gonna ask for their millage back, but they have to ask for the recouped funds that they lost due to Headley. So you're actually asking, people could look at it like you're asking for more money, but you're not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like you're losing funds as it goes. So not only are you asking for the mill, but you're asking for that balance that you lost due to Headley.
I just think though that I think this was said many times when Headley was going on, that people would rather have a specific millage for something rather than just, like, as you said, Nick, like general money.
Correct.
We probably don't want to get too in the weeds tonight on it, but yeah, I just think about that and what we've done, and I think probably we'll continue to fund our capital stuff through fundraising and that kind of thing, and then occasionally get some help from the city, but just to up our operational costs so we can do more programs.
The budget is set by council, so they will do what they do. I do feel the millage thing, there's a little caveat to that communities have done it forever. All right, we're gonna levy 1 mill, which will generate $335,000 for one project for 1 year, and then it's gone.
Mhm.
You wanna do major upgrades to Marina Park or here, wherever you guys decide. It was much easier. It would be much easier to get support of a 1 year, 1 mill, whatever.
Yeah, I hear you.
Project where people can see, okay, this is where my money went and I can use it whenever I want.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a much better outcome.
Okay.
So, Nick, you're mentioning that, the city should be able to operate and maintain our parks. Are we at like I'm trying to sit here and think about like identifying what the problem is. Is the problem that we're not able to operate our parks, or is the problem that we're not able to expand and grow our parks forward?
If you're asking me, it's a capital improvement project. I find our budget to be healthy. Nick can speak otherwise, but
Yes,
operationally, I
and-
feel we're.
Yeah, and here's my opinion, just to look at these budgets for a decade. I would like to see at this point, all right, we've got Kiwanis lined up, we've got a generous donor there, that's gonna turn out sweet, it's gonna be cool. We just finished a $500,000 project up here at Skate Park. You guys have done major improvements to Marina Park. I mean, there's a lot that's happened here since Rachel got here. More than the last 40 years of me living here. And that's awesome. Now, maybe take a step back, take a breath and say, all right, let's see what it costs to do some programming, finish Shea Park, do our Kiwanis thing, and then see where we land on the budget. What's it gonna cost us to maintain and operate this? Because we really don't know yet, because it's also happening so quickly. And then say, yes, okay, perfect. We got our budget hammered out, we're working in the general fund, and whatever money we get from wherever, we're clear sailing. Let's look at our next big project and say, okay, start selling this, you know, not all at once, just let's make sure we can take care of what we've already done.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm thinking about, I think it would be awesome somewhere down the line if we could have somebody actually that would be like a program coordinator or something like that to take that off Rachel, or a halftime person or something, and that would have to come through budget.
Sure, and you know, and everything's about when you bring budget requests to the council or to me or whoever, council ultimately. Here's what we want to do and here's why. We've had requests for, I don't know, yoga on the beach or whatever it may be. All right, what do we think this is gonna cost? And then council and myself will look at the budget as a whole and the general fund and say, okay, we're not bringing any more revenues in, or minimally. I mean, if these things could support themselves ideally. Some of the stuff, I think, you know, user fees, yeah, if you've got a private event, I'm all for that. Charging user fees. If you want somebody to pay to walk on the beach, I think the city should provide that service.
Yeah, and
That money's gonna have to come from somewhere else, one of these line items.
Jamie brought up a really good point a couple of meetings ago about like Fall Fest, for instance, partnering with the DDA, having like that sponsorship, working on sponsors, things like that. Our programs are growing. You know, when we started sledding and s'mores, it's not near the cost that they are now, because now we have 150 people that show up at them as opposed to 50. So like I think kind of slowing down and seeing what our programs actually cost now that we've been doing them for a couple of years is really helpful on planning the budget. So you just had so many changes. Nick is right. Like when we look at the budget in the fall, we're not guessing, but we're really doing strong estimates on where we're gonna land.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of these are really good conversations. What was sort of a long-term conversation
Right.
about where parks funding goes. One of the things that, in my experience in trying to work on parks funding that's really helpful is to really have a great park system, to really run it well, to operate it well, to have things that people like, to keep building the programs like sledding and like the skate park and like the other great programs that we have. Because ultimately, when you go and ask folks to support those things, they feel good about supporting something that they use and that is well maintained and that they feel like operates well. They have confidence in it. So we've done a lot of building, we've done a lot of great work. Rachel's done a great job in getting us to the point where we have a lot of stuff that's been capital projects that'll be completed. Now let's use them. Let's let people enjoy them and run them well. And then perhaps we can have a conversation later about.
And kind of like what your father said, sorry, my father's retired. We keep bringing him up. So he made a really good point that like the more programs we do, rather small or large, the more board meetings we go to, whether it's school, the townships, wherever, people will see that and that will naturally grow. Like you won't be able to contain it at some point.
And I think that's a huge point,
Right.
and that we've not ever done, at least not in my time here, but the conversation with the townships, the conversation maybe with Harbor Point will be dead in the water, but it doesn't hurt to ask. You know, at least maybe there will be board members that say, oh,
Right.
never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Or they might say, you know what, you're not paying for any of our parks out here. Conversation to be had, but more people realize that the parks are a thing that get used heavily, and we want them to be right and run properly.
That would be one of our goals, is how many stakeholders can we get to in these next couple of years and say, we're really excited about all these things we've done and what we plan on doing. How do you want to be involved? You don't want to be left out. So how do you want to be a part of it? And that could be so many different ways, coming from the schools, townships, people in the city, things like that.
And that being said, though, I guess my concern with like taking a big step back and just kind of waiting is that you've got momentum right now.
Right.
And momentum is great. And my worry is that if you're just like completely put the brakes on, then there's not gonna be that talk, there's not gonna be that excitement. So it's trying to find that balance of continuing to
Yeah.
progress and improve, while at the same time figuring out what does this actually look like.
That is the line, that's the hard balancing act. You know, my first thought would be, okay, we now have, or will have, when it's said and done, Kiwanis, you know, beautiful places, the beach is just always gonna be. Maybe clean the bathrooms up, whatever, but, and then do stuff to bring people there to see, okay, this is what we did. We still got momentum. And then here's our next goal out here. Wouldn't this be cool? I don't know. That's the fine line.
We have exciting new programs coming this year, like 3 or 4. One that I'll touch on this evening. We still have, you know, Shea, the locomotive coming. That'll be a highlight. You know, the beach restrooms, like the boardwalk, you know, potentially still working on a site plan for Harborview. I think we'll remain in the spotlight, but I do agree that while you have momentum, like that's when you get people, and maybe like the momentum this year is getting out there and giving people all this information, presenting. And that just keeps it too, because it also gets information about our programming that we're gonna have as well.
So Rachel, is that something that
Sounds like
you-
a PR committee.
Yeah, I was gonna say, coming up with an idea of like how, like, in your opinion as staff, who are the most important people that we should be getting this information to?
Yeah.
And then laying that out, and I'm sure there's some of us that'd be happy to go and volunteer and be those voices, but knowing what you know, where do we start?
And I think we did a lot of that in our public input, that document we just, you know, kind of pushed forward for like part specific, you know, we had the chamber, we had the schools, we had the townships, like we had the historical site, like we had this long list of stakeholders, you know, but we've never actually gone and spoken to them. You know, we've expected them, you know, to come to us at a Parks Board meeting, which is unrealistic. Sometimes you have to pick up and go to them.
So if you can identify the list of priorities, and then maybe as a board, we can
Yeah.
decide who's going to which entity and
Right.
just pitching or just talking about what's going on. I think that would be helpful.
Not to be the devil's advocate, I think it's absolutely right. You're right. The steam's rolling, Parks is moving along, spotlight's on you. That's a good thing. Sometimes it's not. I mean, politically, you don't know.
Great
Just
example.
doing the right thing doesn't always mean that it's gonna be liked.
So on your funding, potential forms of funding, you've got, you know, revenue streams. And then I guess in general, what's staff's recommendation? I don't know how many, I guess I don't understand how many private events we're doing on a regular
Yeah.
basis. And if this is a realistic source of revenue for us to consider.
So yeah, so I think at some point, and Jamie, Dan, I've spoken about this quite a few times. About updating the application for city property. And not trying to overcomplicate it for people trying to do events, nothing like that, but just making sure we're at least breaking even. Because some of these events do take quite a bit of city supplies, because Nick, I'm sure, can agree, you know.
And I think that's a huge point is, you know, some of these things that maybe not everybody's enthused about, both the people are and they want to be involved and enjoy it. If we can come close to breaking even on these things, it'll be a much easier sell across the board to council and the community and the taxpayers. Some things are just meant to be good, like by Christmas.
Yeah, it's a lot of the chamber events, festival of book, you know, the farmers market, definitely events we don't want to see go away due to anyway. Just make sure, you know, when we're doing our application, that we're saying how much time does DPW take taking 6 picnic tables down, putting these trash cans out, how much time does police take with the barricades, you know? And that's something we can work on solely through 2025. We can bring the application, probably bring more from the surrounding communities. Petoskey has a really nice one. Charlevoix has a nice one. Charlevoix doesn't even have fees on there. They leave it up to council. Like, you fill it out, and it depends on the park, it depends on the time of year. Like, it's very in-depth. And then kind of mold it to what we need ours to be. So again, it's not about taking away any community events. It's just ensuring that the city's needs are met as well.
But what about private? I mean, you're mentioning community
So
events,
we-
but private events.
Right now, we don't allow private events in public parks. There are communities, I can't say one right now off the top of my head. I know there are communities such as ours with beautiful views that would do like raffle for like a wedding. Like 2 weddings a year, these are the dates, these are the 3 parks you have to choose from, and you charge an arm and a leg, you know, to have it be private. We do allow weddings. We've had weddings in Upper Zorn, but they're no reception. They do all the put up, take down, and then it's not necessarily closed to the public. I always tell people, like, someone can technically walk through your ceremony, just full disclosure. And those have always worked out well. When I say private events, I mean allowing someone to actually rent out a park space, and ultimately that would always be a council decision anyway.
So spending some time this year looking at
Yeah,
what's being spent, how it's being recouped.
Correct,
And
yeah.
trying to maybe right size that a little bit,
correct,
right
yeah.
price that a little bit, so we can get closer to even.
Yeah.
Like, great.
So we kind of already touched on village, right?
Yep.
And the override.
The developer impact fees, I don't feel either way about. That's fairly new. I can't tell you a community that does it. That would be more, I mean, that's actually a really great idea for like townships, like full disclosure, but
Yeah,
I'm not sure Harbor Springs is.
limited geographically in
Yeah.
size. But
Not like
that,
there's
I've
big-
not heard of that or thought about it, but in some of these townships that, you know, you're putting in a housing development, that's 200 houses
Yeah.
in it. That's gonna put a strain on your parks, that's a good funding situation.
So I threw it in there for fun. I mean, there are some communities also that do like a soda tax to fund their parks. I didn't put that on here because I don't find that relevant for our community. But there are special taxes that communities do for that. And the Parks Foundation and Conservancy, although an amazing concept, the city ultimately comes into control of their parks in a way when you do that. I just don't know for the size to have that. But it does work in other larger communities really well.
I would like to explore a little bit more with the Little Traverse Conservancy and with Sarah Ford and others about having a conversation about like we did for the boardwalk. I think people do feel comfortable giving to the community foundation. That are there ways that we could set up a fund at the community foundation that they could hold on to. I mean, the First Presbyterian Church has had a fund there for decades that just sits there and is part of, they manage it, people contribute to it, but that it may help people feel more comfortable. They're obviously a 501c3 and there's a good write-off for it. Family foundations can do all kinds of stuff with it. Like, if we could establish something like we did for the boardwalk for other projects in the parks, it might be worth having a conversation.
So we did the skate park. through the
Right,
community
and the skate park,
foundation,
it was great.
And that was, I have nothing but amazing things to say about the Community Foundation. Like, they just have it down. David Jones has it down like perfection over there. And it was, you're right. Like, people see the Community Foundation and it's a no-brainer. Last I talked to David Jones, which I can check with him again, they don't do funds for like municipalities. Like, the parks couldn't have like a fund there. Like, a family could start a fund for Harbor Springs Parks, similar to what we had with the other family. But I don't know if we can Usually it's like project specific, like for instance, Petoskey, their fundraising for the winter sports park is through the foundation.
Right, so our church fund is
Yeah.
through there and it's not specific, right? So it's
Right,
just a
yeah.
fund that families leave.
Yeah, so I
funds
wonder if
to.
we
So I
could
wonder if it's, we could have a conversation
Yeah.
with them to sort of see if they could do something similar to it.
I have seen parks, foundations, or, 501c3 backed. Where people would put in money, okay, the capital stays.
Right.
Any interest earned or earnings would go toward operations if you choose. And then you'd have to go back to a foundation member to say, we'd like to take part of this capital for X big projects. I mean, there's infinite number of ways to run that, but I don't know, I guess in my mind, when you're looking for funding, no stone unturned.
Or, I mean, and even if they wouldn't allow just a generic parks members, that doesn't mean they wouldn't allow a Kiwanis fund. Or it's something like a bigger park that like we know we do a lot of program big projects at, to just be ongoing.
Can you remind me what happens with somebody calls the city and wants to donate a park bench? Like, how does that?
Yeah, so they'll call, there's a form they fill out. And then, they choose, where they would like the bench with DPW and staff approval. And then they write a check directly to the city of Harbor Springs. And that
We don't have
goes-
anything set up besides park benches right now for
we
situations?
allow tables as well, but for the most part, it's benches. And the bench program, we technically break even. We make a little money off it, but not much. That's about even. When you put in the bench, the plaque, and then the DPW time to assemble it and put it out there, about, I think we charge $2,500 for the bench program. So, but someone can also spend $2,500 and get a plaque on an existing bench. Then that goes in a fund for a future bench for a park. So let's say they really want a plaque in Marina Park, but we already have all those benches. We can add a plaque to one of those benches. And then that still will fund a future bench. Does that help? Sorry.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just trying to think of bigger, right? Like if there's somebody
Yeah.
who wanted to contribute to parks in general, right? How do we
Because the
manage that?
yeah, because the pickleball courts were funded through the city. Checks were directly written to the city of Harbor Springs. Yep, and the boardwalk was similar. Those checks came directly to the city of Harbor Springs. So if we did have a project, we can take in donations directly to the city. There's some specific like tax information we have to have on the form for people. And then the only other part of that is we only accept checks or cash. So it kind of limits. That's why the community foundation was so great, because they take so many different forms, yeah.
Work with other foundations.
So you're gonna reach out to Tusky Harbor?
Yep, I have that on here, and then I have list of stakeholders and like kind of seeing how we want to present that.
What is the next step in the fundraising committee? We talked about a lot of good ideas, and then at some point there's gonna be a conversation, I guess, on who will pursue these great ideas.
So.
I believe the last I had heard is gonna be on the docket on Monday night's agenda.
Okay.
And it seems like the boardwalk will be their first project, potentially will be their first
I
project.
think that depends on where council wants to go with it.
We did send letters out, Victor and I did, to all the owners of 1,000 and up, the western portion of the boardwalk. He did get the survey out a couple days ago, so the ball is rolling. Then we'll see what people's passion is with the boardwalk, and then maybe council will dictate what the fundraising committee works on first.
Any other questions on Nick and Rachel's funding presentation? All right. And then we'll move on to the Easter egg hunt and report. Thank you, Nick. We'll get some rest.
That's muddy water.
So the Easter egg hunt will be Saturday, April 19th, 11 a.m. at Zorn Park. A little later this year. It's nice. I think last year was like March 30th. So, all I'm looking for is board discussion on improvements, what we'd like to add, change, keep it the same. All right. We already ordered the Easter eggs. Those are my office. I'm gonna get a hold of the Friendship Center and the Key Club to fill them again this year. We're doing some with like stickers and little prizes, some with candy. Sarah, I wanna say even Maggie had a suggestion. I don't know if it was music or what.
Yeah, that's probably me.
Was it?
You need,
Okay.
and a microphone.
Okay. Music,
I mean, you can,
microphone.
those are not that expensive, like.
Right.
Some of the projectors with, you know.
Rachel, do we have a sponsor for the Easter egg hunt?
We do not. We can find one.
Let's try and do that. I think it was so wonderful to have Rocking Horse, thank you, Danny, do the sledding events.
We did one year. I believe it was the Clarks. Sponsored the first one we did.
Right.
So yeah,
I
we'll work
think,
on that.
I feel like she's kind of getting interested again, so that might be a good worthwhile phone call.
But other than that, do we want to keep it? But yeah,
I have one comment.
yeah.
So, excuse me. The Easter Bunny costume, I'm gonna have it repaired because it's splitting in the back and I have a lady who's a tailor and she's gonna fix it so that, you know, some of our larger Easter bunnies won't be ripping the costume apart. So that's underway.
Well, will you be in charge of finding someone?
Yeah,
For the Easter
Yeah,
bunny?
I think the same person as last year, but
Perfect.
you know, I'll be in charge of finding somebody to do it
Awesome.
with the revised costume.
That's good, guys. Thank you.
Any other comments or
Make
suggestions?
sure we haven't got volunteers. I will be one of them.
I don't have a great solution to this, but you bring all these people down and the weather is always like up in the air and you never know what, you know, it's gonna be like, but everyone's there and then they leave within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know what the solution is, but just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
If anybody's got ideas as we're,
Could ask if Blade Childhood right across the street be willing to open the doors or something. Johan's, I mean, they would do something, but that's not a big enough building for everyone to run to.
And
I'll
depending
think on
on,
it though.
yeah,
depending on how big this thing gets, I would approach a church about their.
We get about 100 or more people. It lasts like 3 minutes. Sarah's right, like it is just like a war.
here, we're so excited.
Yeah, yeah, I could reach out.
I think it's the best 2 minutes we have all year.
Clear.
Anything else on the Easter egg hunt? Moving on to old business.
So the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation Spring Grant Cycle is open. Board members can prepare with small projects, 6,000 and under. I say that because this grant system that they have, with kudos to them, has become very popular. Because it is a very quick cycle. So the two I had recommendations are the 2 bicycle fix-it stations. And possibly the toy chest supplies for the beach. Those are nice, quick projects, small funding requests, and serve, you know, a good majority of our public. But if anyone else has recommendations or comments.
My only other thought, and I don't play pickleball, but I know it's very popular. How many pickleball supplies do we have up at?
We have about like 6 paddles,
Okay,
and if you, but yeah, I mean, we could always use.
I don't know if that's an option to be able to lend those out through the skate park or something along those lines. I don't know if there's a difference between kids and adult pickleball paddles.
I don't think they're the same.
Okay.
But that might also be a good thought at the pickleball open house when we have it, maybe just say like, this is a need. Pickleballers are very generous and extremely passionate about pickleball, so anything to help the sport, I think they would catch on to.
So supplies for those sorts of things. So
Yeah.
this is why I'm not necessarily sure that this, so. Supplies for the beach, supplies for pickleball, balls, any of that stuff. We talk to the toy store and figure out cost pricing for all of that stuff, so that you don't have to just order it for them, because we can get pickleball paddles all day long. We can't. I know some people who can. But that will help, and there's
Yeah.
no reason to pay, go someplace else and get them,
Absolutely, yeah.
when you order them and get them. Same with sleds. Some of that. stuff
Yeah,
that
our
we
sleds
get,
up at Kiwanis did come from the toy store downtown.
kinda-
And then some of our Dino Dig stuff is also gonna come from the toy store.
Rachel, do you think it has to be a one or other? One or the other, or could it be
Usually
both?
what I do, you have to ask to apply, so I usually send them a list of like 4 projects, unless we really, really, want like recycling, like having a branding last year. And then they kind of sway what they think based on their other applicants.
So I feel like the bicycle fix-it stations make a lot of sense from the community foundation, because a lot of people ride
Yeah.
the trail, they come into town, whatever, like,
Yeah.
it's nice to have that sort of thing, and it does help other people outside of Harbor.
Correct.
So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Where were you thinking, Rachel? One up by the skate park and then one maybe down by Marina Park?
That was my hope, yep. Is to speak about before that whole Marina Park project actually hits construction. Think of where we would, what went down there. Yeah, one on Bay and one at the skate park makes the most sense to me.
Yep.
It was a clean number we can ask for,
Mhm.
Yeah.
2 of them is, and it's also a clean number to give back to them of how many people we impacted, where they go. It's kind of similar to the recycling.
Any other comments on that from the committee?
Do we need to vote or anything, Rachel, or just consensus?
No, I just want to make sure
Okay.
everyone's on board if I give that list and see where it lands. Okay. And I wanted to make sure I didn't miss a big project that can apply for.
All right, next up. Timeline for Harborview and beach master plans.
Yeah, so looking forward on our capital improvement list, Harborview and Zorn Beach would be the next one. Zorn Beach, we're looking at more plumbing, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do a master plan for the park as a whole. And I do have just like a quick. Tia and I worked on this, and it basically just gives why work on Harborview Park now. The next one is why we should work on Zorn Beach now. Both can likely happen in 2025. So the goal of the Parks Board is to complete a master plan for every park. Council and Planning Commission also asked for this specifically when we brought up the Shea locomotive, and they kind of said, what is your overall plan for this park? It'd be nice to see that for all of them. In order to apply for a DNR Parks grant, the project must be a CIP or in the Parks and Rec 5-year plan. It's in the city's current CIP for 2025. So the plan naturally would be now. We need to be prepared to relocate trees from Shea Park to Harborview Park in the spring. And our other projects are kind of pending. So like the boardwalk will likely be in partnership with this new fundraising committee. Shea Park is in the engineering. Becca and Rader should be back with that in the next few months. And then hopefully we'll go out to bid for fall construction. Kiwanis is in the design phase. Mercury Day should have something to us in the next couple months. And the beach restrooms, again, are more a plumbing project. But we can work on a master plan on Lower Zorn in the meantime. And then for Lower Zorn, kind of the same principles. The garden club is hoping to bring the Parks Board a 50th anniversary garden for near the cannon and the flagpole. So when they brought this up, our first thought was, we don't want a master plan for that park. So we want to put a massive garden in, not a massive garden, but a substantial garden in, without a full plant. And then again, the other projects are kind of pending. So some questions to ask are, the master plan site work does not necessarily determine project priority or funding. I think that's really important for us to focus on. Neither does the CIPs, for that matter. Those years are a ballpark at best. They really come down to engineering costs, council, grants, public input. There are a lot of other things to determine when the projects actually go into the construction, bid out phase. What is the public input going to look like for both these projects? Do we feel Zorn Beach will need more public input? Naturally, it's along the waterfront. We're getting a lot of feedback on that park. So we want surveys, workshops, forums for the year to kind of figure out what we'd like to see there. So ideally, I'd like to see both of them get done in 2025. We've already kind of started her review. So I guess my personal thought, staff recommendation was to kind of finish up our review, at least just a site plan, you know, and then get really deep into Zorn Park. Because the plumbing is kind of loose. That's not really gonna have too much to do with the Parks Board.
Okay.
I like Danny's idea from the last meeting about maybe doing a survey on these parks, just a little snapshot survey on that specific park to kind of go hand in hand with the master plan. So we just are making sure that we're right on the money with, you know, what we're thinking about.
So I would suggest that perhaps we focus on Harbor View this year. The stadium's just been recently remodeled and has a new field on it, thanks to the good taxpayers of Harbor Springs. It looks nice and it's connected to that facility, and that makes a lot of sense. My caution about doing anything at the beach is that the beach was a part of the hornet's nest we kicked over that got a lot of things started and caused us a lot of heartache and has sort of continued to ripple through city conversations. This is gonna be a tough year going, and has been, and will continue to be a bit of a tough year. I'm not sure that when, that given that we have a plumbing issue and that doesn't really need a whole lot of public input to fix the plumbing. Not sure that, and I understand we want to put flowers around the flagpole, but that feels like that's the garden club thing to sort of figure out. I'm not sure we want to open a can of worms about what we want to do at the beach with some folks who are slightly litigious and are into sort of pushing back. So
And I'm comfortable with that as well. From a staff standpoint, I'm comfortable with the plumbing. The plumbing, Lucas and I found the document, the plumbing's 50 years old. Something in the building, something needs to be done, whether that comes from the general fund, infrastructure, whether it's gonna be very difficult to fundraise for plumbing. I think we can all agree with that. It's gonna be difficult to get a grant for plumbing. So although I just want it to be clear that although we're working on the site plan, the master plan for Harbor View, it doesn't necessarily mean that funding will happen before the beach plumbing, because that's a necessity. This is more if someone walks into the city tomorrow and says, well, I have 70 grand and I want to put a pavilion in a park, we can say, I know where that pavilion is going to go, without question.
my suggestion would be to work on Harbor View. Maybe hold on to the beach until late, if it all goes well and later in the year, things sort of settle, and we can start having those conversations, that makes a lot of sense. If we can't, that's okay.
Would you agree that council will have more input on the beach plumbing versus the parks board? That'll be a more council funding
As
than.
far as the plumbing goes,
Yeah,
it's a health and safety issue of
Yeah.
a publicly owned building. I think that's where council needs to step in and say, look, we need to do something. Like again, back to the original conversation, we need to be able to maintain what we have. If we can't do that, then we shouldn't build.
so I think we need more information on what we can and can't do with the building and what that's gonna look like. I don't think that's gonna have a lot of parks support.
You're not talking about relocating the building, are you?
No, I'd like to keep the building actually it's a beautiful building. Ideally, I wouldn't put it on at all. Just hoping we can do some upgrades in the meantime.
It's more maintenance, not creating a new plan. So let's talk about Harbor.
Would we have Mark Boudet or somebody look at this though? Like, would be good timing if there is some minor reconfiguration that, we might be able to take advantage of, that would happen along with the plumbing.
To kind of go with what Dan is saying, I think, and Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what Dan is saying is, let's say someone comes down and they say, you have to completely refigure this building to do anything to the plumbing, because it was done 50 years ago, no one quite knows. Then it may be more of a conversation of, well, if we're gonna spend this money, that's gonna push us then to work on a master plan for the park. Hope it doesn't come to that, because I like that building.
Well, or the other thing is we could think of this as a master plan for City Beach. And then we could have another master plan for Lower Zorn in the grassy area. I don't know. I just also am really gun shy about trying to, I'm still recovering from the last hornet stings.
They all have PTSD.
I just, I'm not sure we need to do anything at the beach.
Yep.
If the plumbing issue may push us to try to have to do something, we don't know that right now.
Right.
Yeah,
Ideally, we could just get the plumbing fixed, the building could remain just fine, we don't have to do anything, nothing moves. And we survive for a little while longer and not have to deal with anything at the beach this year.
Yeah, and from a staff perspective for Harborview, what's so nice is that is a very great potential for a grant. You have Bay Bluffs right there, you got the Little League. I mean, that's gonna have a lot of community letters of support. So that's why I don't necessarily wanna fund it first or, start engineering or anything, but I would like some sort of plan that when an opportunity comes available, we have that.
So what do you need from us, Rachel? Is
I
it
just-
something that we need to put on the agenda next month, 2 months?
Yeah, we'll probably likely next month, as long as the board is okay with moving forward with basically coming back to Harborview. We pretty much had an idea of what we wanted to do. But again, that wasn't a staff decision. So
I have some really, really exciting, different kind of organizational options, to look at. So, I would suggest let's put it on the agenda for next month. And Rachel, when it does come time for you and Lucas to go down and look at, the beach building, I do think it's a good idea to take Mark Boudet or somebody with you just to, kind of have a look at it from that standpoint.
I think we're gonna go with the people who originally put it in just for the first view, so we have a little more information since it was like 50 years ago and we have kind of like wacky documents. And then we'll have to work with Victor on how that works, have someone else come look at it. But the
Yeah,
company
it
who
could be-
originally did it is still in town.
Yeah, it could just be a consultation, or I bet Mark would just, well, I don't know, I can't speak for him, but yeah, I bet he would just come have a look. I just want to make sure that we're not missing an opportunity that we would regret down the line.
Any other questions?
Sounds like we got a plan. All right. Any public comment on any agenda items we've had today? All right. Seeing none, we'll do the Parks Director report.
Oh, all right, well, I'll leave it now. Forgot. All right, before I forget, I don't have it in here, but council made a request at the last meeting that not only will we be posting our minutes, but we will also be posting our YouTube videos in the entire packet post meetings on a separate, act right on YouTube. So that's all gonna be posted along with the minutes.
See me with my cold brain.
Yeah. Some admin updates, we already kind of talked about the fundraising committee, so I won't touch on that again. I'm gonna be out of town for the MPerks conference in Traverse City, first week of March, super exciting. I think what I'm gonna start doing, I did it, my last job is I did just a quick presentation on the hot topics that everyone was talking about. And then Parks Corner on programming has been sent out for edits. It'll be in the paper the next couple weeks. Sarah, did you want to bring up?
Yeah, I was just gonna, for discussion, the possibility, and I understand if it for our pass for this year, but the swimming in s'mores is scheduled from 6:30 until 8:30. Which I think is fine for July, but I feel like when we did this in August, people dwindled by 7:30 because it was getting darker and it's cooler. And so maybe just thought of, do we switch up those times from 5 to 7?
Yeah.
Just make it, and if people are concerned about dinner, can we bring down some grill and the hot dogs to add to the, just like we do for.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna change the dynamic, just because it went in the Parks Corner article in February. I think we'll be safe
Trying
to change the time.
I should have looked at it sooner. I didn't, I'm sorry, but I would just suggest 5 to 7 as a timeline instead of 6:30 to 8:30.
And do we wanna do that? Then my question for what is, do we wanna do that for each event to keep it the same, or do we just wanna change the August?
I say, because we only have two swimming and s'mores on the books.
Yep.
5 to 7,
Okay.
unless people have different suggestions at times.
That's good.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And then Pro Image visited Kiwanis, for 18 whole signs and one larger rule signs by whole one. It came in just under, $1,000. So I'm sending them some images of what we want. I'm gonna work with Scott. I need Mary's phone number or email if you have it.
Okay.
Just to ensure everything is gonna be in line. Cups. It's like pre-pouring the forms and then come up in the spring, but he's still in line, have everything put in, so the disc golf is gonna have some really cool improvements this spring. I met with some pickleball players on, Monday, actually one specifically, but she had kind of rallied and gotten some information. The pickleball courts have been there for about 4 years now, and they're kind of to the point where they're becoming popular. We may want to look at just our rules. When we put them in, we just put in like our basic pickleball rules. So with the open house, I'd like to promote that pretty hard, so like we can get what people want on the rule signs, you know. For instance, right now we have like the rack where you can put paddles in and like rotate, but also on our signage, we have an hour use. So people get up there and they're confused. Is it the paddle system and we're rotating, or is it an hour use? So those are the things we're gonna have to learn at the pickleball open house. But it was all really positive. And then Mark is gonna do a youth clinic once a month, super cool. And he will be at the pickleball open house as well. And then the garden club, is doing it.
Pause really quick on that.
Yeah.
Is there a way for you to send that feedback out to people prior to the pickleball clinic, so the clinic itself can be more conversations of it
Yeah.
versus the brainstorming?
Yeah, I can look into what we have. And Mark has like a list of everyone who's done his clinics and things like that as well. And then the Harbor Springs Garden Club is interested in planning the 50th anniversary garden in Zorn Park. They're gonna bring a proposal. It's gonna have to come to the Parks Board and then also gonna go to council. It's a really cool, neat idea because it kind of connects Bay Street. You know, they kind of start at Zoll and then it goes to Marina Park and then just kind of, there's nothing else. So it'd be nice to kind of connect it through Zorn, and who doesn't love a garden? And they do such an amazing
They do
job,
great
so,
work.
yeah. So there's that. And then programming updates. Ice Fest was popping. If you weren't there, you missed quite a good time. It was cold, but it was fun. They brought back the carriage rides, great things. They had almost just short of 50 sculptures, some live demos, 2 fire and ice shows. We went through 350 hot dogs. It was just madness from Friday night on. So kudos to the DDA.
Music in the park. Big.
Yeah,
Like it made it feel
Yeah,
like a party.
like 93 or something
Yeah,
there.
yeah, like
Yeah, it was sweet.
DJ in the park, it made it awesome. It
Yeah.
was a really big
Notes
plus.
or fall points?
Yeah, music, makes it feel like a party.
And then sledding and s'mores between our sponsorship with the Rocking Horse Toy Company and donations, we've spent a total of $92.89 out of the general fund. Yay! And that's really impressive considering that our turnout has increased as well. We've had about 125 to 150 at each one. We may have to reevaluate the sponsorship amount in 2026. With high school, and then a shout out to the high school volunteers because they are freezing their butts off and doing a great job. I also have the weather. So the first one, it was light snow Friday evening. We got just enough to sled, and then day of it was like a calm, like aesthetic light flurry. It was perfect. And then on the 25th, we got like 12 inches of snow, which made it almost difficult for the fire department to get their equipment up. So that's like a nice issue that we had, I guess, compared to other years. And then the wind picked up at 4 p.m. to about 15 miles per hour. So the building was really busy, but we still had a great turnout. I thought that may deter people, but it didn't. And then the 2025 final programming dates. Also, to add to this, I don't know if I have it in here. Well, you talked about crafts at Kiwanis, the Stars Align, and Dawson Moore, who is a West Traverse Township resident, reached out, and he does Scandinavian like wood, like projects, woodworking, where he'll like collect all the wood naturally and organically, and then he teaches people how to use the tools. He has all his equipment, and his first class is February 18th at Kiwanis. So he brings all his tools, he takes 10 people, they're all free. But that's like an amazing skill. He also is potentially interested in helping us with our birdhouse, but that kind of organically just fit. And that's awesome. So
What time is it at?
I want to say it's 6 to 8 p.m. on February 18th. I'm waiting for a final detail from him, and then I'm gonna post it on Facebook and really get it out there for him.
Super awesome.
So do people have to register, Rachel?
They do, they're gonna have to register through him. He takes
Okay.
10 at a time. I think the first class is just simply like getting comfortable with the tools. I don't know, less about making something and more just kind of shaving the wood but it has great potential. So, and what a perfect individual to do it. So there were so many people are woodworkers, but not everyone wants to teach woodworking.
It's great.
So it was awesome that he reached out. Any other questions or concerns? Good?
All right, seeing nothing. Is that it, everybody?
Any public comment?
Yeah.
We're good.
All right, next meeting, March 10th, 5:30.
Yeah,
There,
March
we swear.
Monday.
Monday.
See you guys.
Hopefully we're all feeling better.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jeff. Thank you, guys.